Okay, so all that talk online lately about banks maybe crashing. Everyone's saying we got to rush to the ATM.
Yeah, seems like it's got a lot of folks wondering if they should be worried.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We've got a whole bunch of online discussions here. Some are all cash is king, others say it's all hype.
A whole lot of noise to sift through.
Right. So we're going to help you cut through it all, figure out what's really going on, what the risks really
And
are.
what you might actually want to do about it.
Exactly. So we're looking at all these discussions online, right?
Yeah,
About potential banking outages and this whole idea that we should all be stockpiling cash.
right. Like it's the only safe haven. Interesting how this kind of taps into some pretty deep fears people have.
Totally. It's like in this digital age, we're so reliant on things just working. You see headlines about cyber attacks, power grid problems.
Makes you wonder, what if it all just stops?
Exactly.
Hmm.
Have you ever thought about what you would do if you couldn't access your money electronically?
It's definitely a thought-provoking scenario. And it's fascinating how some of these discussions frame this cash out thing as preparedness.
Yeah, like a blast from the past when people didn't rely so much on technology.
Exactly.
They're pointing to things like the 2008 financial crisis, when people lost faith in the banks and rushed to withdraw their savings.
Right.
And it makes you think, maybe they were onto something. There's even that quote going around, better safe than sorry.
There is. And that better safe than sorry feeling is definitely fueling some of this. But it's important to understand how banks actually work before we jump to any conclusions.
Okay, so break it down for us.
Well, banks operate on a system of fractional reserves, meaning they only hold a fraction of their deposits in cash at any given time.
Oh, okay.
So let's say everyone suddenly decided to withdraw all their money at once.
That would be a problem.
Yeah, it could trigger a liquidity crunch. Imagine a bank has, say, $10 on hand for every $100 deposited.
Okay, I'm following.
If everyone came demanding their cash all at the same time, the bank wouldn't have enough to fulfill all those requests.
So the fear itself could become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why understanding the mechanics of the system is so crucial. Helps us separate genuine vulnerabilities from the less likely scenarios.
Okay, but let's say hypothetically a large number of people did withdraw their cash.
Right.
What could we see happen in the real world? Beyond just, the hassle of not having access to your money electronically, are there bigger consequences?
Well, imagine ATMs constantly running out of cash. Businesses refusing digital payments because they're not sure the systems are working.
Oh, wow.
And people resorting to bartering goods and services because they've lost faith in the currency.
That sounds chaotic, like straight out of some post-apocalyptic movie.
It might sound extreme, but it highlights how interconnected our financial systems are and how a loss of confidence can ripple through the whole economy.
So is this cash out advice actually good advice? Is that the best way to prepare? Or are there like smarter approaches, things we can do that aren't so drastic?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And it's one we need to think about carefully, weigh the potential risks and the unintended consequences.
Okay, so let's do that. Where do we even begin to unpack this whole preparedness idea without just, fueling unnecessary panic?
Yeah.
What does it really mean to be prepared in this digital age?
Well, I think it starts with separating those valid anxieties from the more speculative fears. Cybersecurity threats, for instance. They're very
Oh,
real.
for sure.
We've seen high-profile data breaches, ransomware attacks on companies and institutions.
Yeah, it's like that time when insert a specific relatable example of a recent cyber attack or power outage. I remember thinking, wow, if it can happen to them.
Exactly, it can happen to anyone. It shows how vulnerable even seemingly secure systems can be. And that's where understanding even a little bit about cybersecurity becomes so important.
So it's not just about stockpiling cash. It's also about being aware of those digital risks, taking steps to protect yourself online.
Absolutely. Simple things like strong passwords, being cautious about phishing emails,
Yeah.
keeping your software updated,
Right.
those can go a long way in reducing your risk.
Okay, so cybersecurity is one part of it. But what about all this talk of economic instability? I mean, inflation is hitting everyone. The global situation feels kind of shaky.
Yeah.
It's easy to start feeling like, well, nowhere is safe for your money.
And those anxieties are valid. That's where understanding personal finance comes in. Diversifying investments, having a solid budget, building an emergency fund.
Right, an emergency fund.
All of that is essential for building financial resilience,
Yeah.
regardless of what happens with banks.
Right, so it's about having a buffer, a safety net, so you're not totally caught off guard if things go south.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the cash is king debate. while having some emergency cash is certainly a good idea.
Especially if, the power goes out, internet's down, can't access your accounts.
Yes, for those short-term localized disruptions, having some cash can be a lifesaver. But the amount should be reasonable based on your needs and your situation. It's not about hoarding piles of cash under your mattress.
So it's more about having a plan than panicking and just draining your bank account.
Right.
But how do we find that balance? How do we prepare for these potential issues without, contributing to the very problems that we're worried about?
That's where we need to get into some actual strategies, explore some alternative approaches to financial security.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into those, but I think we need a quick pause first. We'll be right back to continue this deep dive.
So before the break, we were talking about how to get ready for potential disruptions without going overboard, like withdrawing all your cash.
Right, because that could actually backfire.
Right.
Lead to that liquidity crunch we talked about.
Exactly.
So what are some smarter ways to approach this whole preparedness thing?
Well, I think it starts with understanding that real preparedness isn't just about having a bunch of cash. It's about building resilience across multiple areas of your life. Not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Okay, so like a holistic approach to being prepared.
Exactly.
But what does that actually look like?
It means thinking about, your financial well-being, of course, but also your physical safety, your ability to communicate, your access to essential resources, things like that.
So it's about more than just money. It's about being ready for a wider range of disruption.
Exactly. Think about it. What if there's a natural disaster,
Right.
a big power outage, or even some kind of civil unrest? Those things can disrupt access to banking services just as easily as, a cyber attack could.
That's a good point. So cash is a good start, but only one piece of the puzzle.
Right. It's about diversifying your options, having backup plans.
Okay.
For example, do you have a way to communicate if your cell phone service goes down?
I guess I haven't really thought about that. I rely on my phone for everything.
It's something we all take for granted these days. But imagine, cell towers are overloaded or damaged.
Yeah.
Having a backup communication plan, like a ham radio, even just a list of important phone numbers written down, that could be huge.
Okay, that makes sense. So communication's one area. What else should we be thinking about?
Essential supplies. Do you have enough food, water, medications, stuff that could last you a few days, maybe even a week if something happened?
I do have a little emergency kit, but I'll admit it's probably not as well stocked as it should be. It's easy to put those things off.
It is. It's human nature to kind of procrastinate when it comes to unpleasant stuff.
Yeah.
But taking the time to put together a good emergency kit can really give you peace of mind.
Okay, so communication supplies, two big ones. What else falls under this whole holistic preparedness umbrella?
Community. In times of crisis, our social networks can be our biggest asset. Having good connections with your neighbors, friends, family.
It's like that saying, it takes a village.
Exactly. We're not meant to go through tough times alone.
For sure.
And this brings us back to financial resilience. Having a diverse network can help your financial well-being too.
So it's not just about having your own emergency fund. It's also about having people you can count on if things get rough.
Exactly. Maybe there's a friend or family member you trust who could lend you some cash if you needed it.
Yeah.
Or someone who could give you a place to stay if you had to leave your home. Something like that.
Okay, I see how all these things kind of work together. It's like creating this web of support and resources to help you through anything.
Exactly. And that includes exploring those alternative financial systems we talked about.
Right.
They might not be for everyone, but they're worth looking into if you want to diversify beyond traditional banking.
So crypto, decentralized finance, even those local currencies. Risky, maybe, but a different way to manage your money.
Exactly. It's all about doing your research, understanding the pros and cons, deciding if it fits your values and your risk tolerance.
This has been really helpful. I'm starting to get the bigger picture here. It's not about reacting to fear. It's about being proactive, taking control of your finances.
And remember, preparedness isn't a one-time thing. It's ongoing. You're constantly learning, adapting, adjusting your strategies as you go.
Right, right.
The world is changing all the time, and so are our financial systems.
So we need to stay informed, stay curious, stay engaged. It's like you said, it's about being adaptable, resourceful.
Exactly. And it's about understanding that we're all in this together. We can learn from each other, support each other, build a stronger future, collectively.
I love that. It's empowering to think about what we can do when we shift from fear to action, from scarcity to abundance.
And that's where the real power is. It's not about hoarding things.
Hmm.
It's about sharing knowledge,
Yeah.
building connections, creating systems that benefit everyone.
This deep dive has been amazing. We've gone from worrying about bank failures to practical tips to these whole new financial systems. It's been a journey, for sure.
It has.
And I hope our listeners are feeling like they can take control of their own financial well-being.
I hope so too. And remember, even if you don't do everything we talked about today, the most important thing is to start thinking about your finances,
Right.
asking questions, taking steps to create a more secure future for yourself and for your community.
That's a great point. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay connected.
So we've talked a lot about the what ifs, but now let's get down to brass tacks.
Right. What can our listeners actually do to feel more prepared?
That's the key, isn't it? It's one thing to talk about it, but another to put it into action.
Exactly.
So let's break it down.
Love it. Hit me with those action steps.
First, let's go back to that emergency fund we talked about.
Okay. Yeah.
Remember, this isn't about hoarding cash, but having some on hand for short-term issues.
Right. Right.
How much do you think is reasonable to have?
Well, it depends, right?
Sure.
On your situation, your comfort level, I've heard different amounts. Some say a few $100s,
Right.
others say more.
Yeah, it's really about what works for you.
Right.
Think about your regular expenses, how long you could manage without electronic access, any specific needs you might have.
Yeah, make sure it's somewhere safe and accessible.
Well, absolutely. No point having it if you can't get to it when you need it.
Exactly.
Now, beyond cash, let's talk about diversifying your access to funds.
Okay. Yeah.
You mentioned relying a lot on your phone.
Oh, yeah.
What if you lost it or it stopped working?
Oh, man. Back to the Stone Age, I guess. Cash, checks, maybe even traveler's checks. Do they still have those?
They do.
Wow.
And while they might seem a bit old school, it shows how important it is to have those backups. Maybe a few checks tucked away or a prepaid debit card,
Okay.
just in case.
And what about credit cards?
Good point.
They seem like a good backup if the digital systems are down.
They can be, yeah. But keep in mind, not every place takes them, especially in an emergency. Good to have a mix of options.
Okay, so cash, checks, credit cards. Got it. Anything else on the financial preparedness front?
Well, what about those alternative financial systems we were talking about?
Oh, right.
Might not be for everyone, but worth exploring if you want to go beyond traditional banking.
So crypto, decentralized finance, local currencies, all that.
Exactly.
They have their risks, but it's a different way to think about money.
It is. Do your research, understand the ups and downs, decide if it fits your values, your risk tolerance.
I'm feeling like I'm getting a much clearer picture now. It's not about panicking, it's about being proactive, taking charge.
Exactly. And remember, preparedness isn't a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Right.
It's an ongoing process. You learn, you adapt, you adjust as you go. The world changes. Financial systems change with it.
So we got to stay informed, stay curious, stay engaged, be adaptable, resourceful, like you were saying.
Exactly. And remember, we're all in this together. We can learn from each other, support each other, build a more resilient future together.
It really is inspiring when you think about what's possible when we move from fear to action, from scarcity to abundance.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Not hoarding resources, but sharing knowledge, building those connections,
Absolutely.
creating systems that work for everyone.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We started with anxieties about banks, moved to practical tips, explored entirely new financial systems.
It's been a journey.
It really has. And I hope our listeners feel empowered, like they can take control of their financial well-being.
Me too. And, even if you don't take every single step we talked about today, the most important thing is to start thinking critically.
For sure.
Ask those questions. Take those steps to create a more secure, fulfilling future for yourself and for your community.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay connected.